Most leaders believe they're ready for growth, ready for opportunity, ready for whatever the market presents. And that confidence makes sense. Performance is strong, capital is adequate, the board feels aligned, and the team is capable. Nothing appears unstable. But readiness is not the same as confidence, and it's not the same as performance. Readiness is structural. It has very little to do with how calm things feel. I've seen institutions that felt completely steady until timing changed. And when timing changed, what looked like calm turned out to be unexamined structure. The leverage matrix forces this distinction. Readiness relative to urgency. When urgency is low, unreadiness stays hidden. When urgency rises, unreadiness shows up quickly. It doesn't look dramatic. It feels like compression. Decisions that once had room suddenly feel tight. Options that felt open start narrowing. Conversations accelerate. And acceleration has a way of revealing what was never organized in the first place. Many banks operate comfortably in what feels like strategic command. Strong performance, stable markets, no visible pressure. But position isn't determined by comfort. It's determined by preparation relative to timing. And timing rarely asks permission before it changes. Here's the uncomfortable part. You cannot measure readiness by how calm things feel. Calm markets conceal structural gaps. Low urgency conceals unexamined assumptions. And assumptions don't become visible until something forces them into the open. So what does readiness actually mean? It doesn't mean you intend to sell. It doesn't mean you're signaling anything to the market. And it doesn't require you to be planning a transaction. What it means is simpler than that. It means the underlying structure of the institution has been examined. You've actually talked through governance alignment, not just assumed it was there. You understood how your shareholder base would respond under pressure, not just how they feel when earnings are strong. Your contracts aren't sitting untouched for years. Key relationships don't live in someone's head. If someone needed information, it could be produced without the entire organization scrambling. Succession isn't hopeful. It's been thought through in practical terms. When those things are clear, urgency doesn't create panic. When they aren't, urgency starts setting the pace. And once urgency sets the pace, leverage quietly shifts. I used to think disciplined leadership meant waiting. If something happens, we'll get ready. That sounds reasonable. It assumes time. Time is the first thing urgency removes. I've watched leadership teams try to assemble readiness under compression. It is not where you want to be. Documents get pulled, advisors get called, board conversations accelerate, leverage shifts from exploration to necessity, and necessity rarely produces premium outcomes. Readiness cannot be built at the same speed urgency arrives. It has to exist beforehand. Otherwise, structure is assembled reactively, and reactive structure always carries cost. This doesn't mean you need to act. It means you need to understand. There's a difference. Knowing your position does not require movement, but not knowing your position creates hidden exposure. I've seen banks defer governance discussions for years because performance was strong. I've seen succession conversations postponed because now is not the time. I've seen boards unified in comfort discover philosophical differences once urgency entered the room. None of those banks were weak. They were simply unexamined. And unexamined readiness becomes visible only when tested. The most common misconception I hear is this: we're not thinking about that right now. That may be true, but readiness is not about intent. It's about structural capacity. Performance does not test governance. It does not test documentation discipline. It does not test institutional memory. It does not test continuity under stress. Only urgency tests those things. And by the time urgency arrives, testing is no longer theoretical. This is where institutions quietly drift from strategic command into being on the clock. Not because they failed, because they assumed preparation could wait. The leverage matrix is not a prediction tool. It's a clarity tool. And it asks one simple question. If urgency increased tomorrow, what would happen to your leverage? Would it expand or would it compress? Or would you be figuring that out in real time? Not knowing is a position. Markets price uncertainty. Boards feel uncertainty. Leadership carries uncertainty. You may never intend to transact. That's not the point. Readiness preserves choice. Choice preserves control. And control depends on preparation that was done before it was required. Here's the difference. Optimism says, we'll figure this out. Calm says, we've already looked at it. Those two feel similar until pressure arrives. Calm cannot be manufactured under pressure. It's earned through examination. This isn't a call to action, it's a call to clarity. Because readiness is invisible until it's tested. And when it's tested, the outcome is largely determined. So here's the real question. If urgency increased unexpectedly, would your leverage expand or would it tighten? Not emotionally, structurally.